From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and here's what's ahead. K-State's Dan O'Brien will offer his last-minute thoughts ahead of the USDA's release of its monthly grain supply and demand report later this morning, and why he thinks you grain producers have ample opportunities ahead to price your fall crops. Then the final profile in this week's series on the couples who'll be formally inducted as Kansas Master Farmers, Master Farm Homemakers in ceremonies next Tuesday at the Kansas State Fair. Recognition co-sponsored by K-State Research and Extension. Today, the story of Ellis and Rita Yoder of McPherson County. And awaiting to talk Kansas agricultural weather with us, K-State's Mary Knapp, plus more for you right here on Agriculture Today. Welcome once again to Agriculture Today. Well, grain producers out there are likely eager for something to change the bearish mood in the grain markets of late. And would it be in the form of that USDA grain supply and demand report due out within the hour? We'll ask our guest about that, Dan O'Brien, grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension, from his office in Colby, northwest Kansas. So, Dan, the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates are due out. Before we talk of that, there was an interesting development in that the USDA's Farm Service Agency jumped the gun a bit.
Yes, if this was a political issue, we'd say there was a leak, but it wasn't. I don't think it's anything as nefarious as that. But estimates came out of the Farm Service Agency showing, in essence, higher corn acreage, higher soybean acreage, a little bit higher wheat acreage, coming out of the FSA numbers, which the World Ag Board then uses in their supply-demand numbers. That'll be represented in the report. So unless there's some change in those numbers that would come out, and you would think there wouldn't be that much, it looks like one half of the production equation, i.e. acres, is that we have pretty good confidence on. Maybe there might be some other small changes or something, but right now that's pretty strong. So really, if any changes happen, it would be on the yield side. And the general narrative of the market and understanding is that they're not that worried about it. Still, though, this is the first survey that the USDA will have gone out into the fields and actually done their enumerated checks in. They didn't do that in August. When you look at what was estimated for a yield in the August report, 174.6 bushels per acre, pre-report estimates of 175.6. That's what's on the table. And then the projection, and actually it came out before the USDA, the accidental leak that happened here a day or so ago, was at 14.9 billion bushels. And that was estimating 500, 800 million more planted acres. Well, that number, what is that now? Is that probably closer to 15 billion bushels? So we have some vagary going on right now in terms of where these markets will go. On the soybean side, also, yields projected in this report at 50.3. They were at 50 even in the August report. So not a lot of change. Again, acreage up some. The USDA projected in August 4.339 billion bushels for this year's crop. 4.365 was the pre-report trade estimate. So a little bit of an increase, about 26 million bushels. We shall see. We'll see where all that goes. I think overall that unless when they do those state surveys, they find some type of disease pressure or some more draconian impacts in the northern states that overbalance what's been happening in the other parts of the country where we have had pretty good success, or at least decent prospects for corn. It seems that we'd be looking at numbers that are pretty strong for production for corn and for soybeans, and that markets would probably not be in for a major upside surprise, which means if all these expectations don't come about, then that's when the surprise happens. So it'd be interesting, even after that leak, that on closes yesterday, that D's corn closed down 1/4 cent to 5/10, so not a lot of movement on all of that. So we still have December corn at $5.10, still above $5. November soybeans at $12.70 and a half, down 9 cents. Of course, those both are down sizably from where they were this summer and in recent, somewhat recent weeks. So we'll see.
Now, there's more than a little anticipation of what that report will say, Dan. But there are other noteworthy developments beyond that.
Eric, there are issues on the corners that we could talk about. The South American CONAB group, other groups talking about more reductions coming in their estimate of second crop corn in South America. So for what we're seeing up here, look like more acres, a little higher number. They're cutting back their corn acreage even more down there. Stat Canada came out with their wheat estimates, and most analysts are looking at that number and saying, well, headlines in the ag press, credible analysts saying they could be 15 to 20% still too high for what they have.
Yeah, those numbers were panned very quickly from Stats Canada.
Yes, and there's a story on this in terms of what Stats Canada thought earlier, what USDA did in the August report, and now what's coming out now. We'll see how the USDA responds to this. So when you have a shortfall like this in such major drought, that's where we're at. Hard red winter wheat futures, again, with seeding just around the corner, literally. Dees wheat 682 3/4. It is interesting. We talked about it last week that the hard red winter wheat crop insurance price is like $7.12 or $7.13 per bushel. So very good price. We'll see where all of that goes. If anything would spur a few more wheat acres, it might be a weakness at this key time in feed grains and oil seeds that have come, and some strength in wheat. We'll see. The big issue on wheat is the September 30th report coming up, Small Grains Annual Summary, and that's when we have the potential to find out if there are more losses than we thought up in the northern states. Would add one more thing. It does seem that, again, no surprise to our ag listeners that we've had concerns about Hurricane Ida and what it had done to shipping. We do have, I guess, hopeful messages coming about in terms of about one key export terminal open, others not far from being at the same point from either storm damage, electricity not on. And interesting, just as we speak, that you've got reports that Asian buyers are looking anxiously towards buying what's available from the U.S. because South America, they have problems getting, they're running out of supplies on one hand, they have low rivers down the Panera River on the other. That hurts their traffic out in moving their crops. So anyway, the point is that I know what this pre-report estimate has come out and showed a little higher acres than before, but you look around at the South American shortfall in corn, other countries looking towards the U.S. to come in and out to buy. You got the issue up in Canada with regard to a shorter wheat crop. And I guess if there's any hope, a silver lining in what comes out of reports like this is that, eager buyers would view price declines as buying opportunities. They would. So we'll see where that goes. We'll be watching also the ending stocks numbers for old crop for corn and soybeans, which as of August 31st came about, and then what we're anticipating for new crop ending stocks. And it does look like there's the idea that we'll be gaining about 40-some million bushels on old crop corn up to 1.159, still tight ending stocks, a range of 1.091 billion up to 1.2. And for soybeans, USDA estimated about 160 million bushels in the August report for ending stocks for the old crop marketing year, 168 for soybeans in the new. And really, when you look at what the anticipation is for the next year, and that's really maybe the key going forward for anybody that will be facing a storage versus sale decision with new crop coming on, et cetera. You've only got corn ending stocks projected right now by the market to increase from 1.159 billion bushels in this old crop marketing year up to 1.341. That's still not 1.5 or 1.8 or 2. You're showing a moderate improvement. And that's with hurricane issues that have come in and other maladies kind of gumming up the works and logistics. So anyway, interesting. And on the soybean side, 168 ending stocks for old crop marketing year with all that's happening in the world, et cetera. Well, we're tepidly saying, we'll get up to 182. So really going forward, we're not counting on a great, big, huge recovery yet. That happened in 2002 that dramatically changed where these markets are at. If that's the case, weather risk, you name it, all come into play. Throw in La Nina rattling its saber down South America, affecting their crops, and could come and affect us. Then you've just got ongoing risks that are likely to give us some pricing opportunities beyond harvest here and at the end of this year and on into the next.
So that really is the message you'd like to part with. Producers need not get antsy at this point, even as they see the markets drift lower in recent days.
That's the message for producers. And I think there's a question for buyers. We've come through a marketing year where we've been really tight, just hoping to get to this point where, maybe we'll have good crops this year. And it does seem like we'll have at least decent crops in the U.S. How will potential buyers respond to lower prices now after they came through a period for about 8-9 months where it was really touch and go as to what they'd have? So I guess to the degree that prices go lower, I'm wondering about how buyers will respond and as they try to secure prices to not find themselves in the same situation next year as they were this year.
Right. Looking forward to what the USDA shares in that WASDE report. Again, that's at 11 o'clock this morning, Central Time. We'll be watching for that, talking about it with Dan next week as well. In the meantime, check out his notes on the markets, which are available to you now at agmanager.info. And Dan, we appreciate the word. Talk to you again next week. Many thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Take care.
Dan O'Brien is along with us each Friday to get into the grain market factors of interest. He is a grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension, based in Colby, northwest Kansas. We'll return with more for you after this break. You're tuned to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. We're back now on Agriculture Today and concluding this week's series on the 6 Kansas couples who will be inducted formally next week as Kansas Master Farmers, Master Farm Homemakers Class of 2020. Again, this recognition program co-sponsored by K-State Research and Extension along with Kansas Farmer Magazine, honoring couples for their leadership in agriculture, in environmental stewardship, and in community service. And here's more about the 6th and final couple in this year's outstanding class. The path back to the family farm was not exactly a direct one for Ellis Yoder. He grew up in western McPherson County on the farmstead that has been in the Yoder family for 120 years. After graduating from McPherson College in 1971, Ellis opted to enlist in the Air Force rather than be drafted into the Army as the Vietnam War was going on then. He remained in the Air Force until the fall of 1977, at which time he returned to the farm. Rita was raised on a diversified farm in Dickinson County. After graduating from Sterling College, she embarked on a career in extension home economics, which led her to be eventually assigned to McPherson County, where she met Ellis, and they wed in 1985. As Ellis steadily took the farming operation over from his father, it grew, and it gravitated toward innovative crop production practices, including conservation tillage and, more recently, cover crop production. The Yoders have become renowned for their advanced crop management approaches. They currently farm 1,530 acres, focusing on wheat, grain sorghum, and soybeans in rotation. Their 3 boys all attended Kansas State University, all earning degrees in engineering, and son Kevin has now agreed to take the reins of the farm as Ellis and Rita ease into retirement.
My dad was born and raised here at this home. His father actually moved here about 1900. They built a small home here, then built a big barn, and then built the home that we're living in now.
So how many generations would that be of Yoders farming this area?
Well, 5 generations have owned this land now, or will have shortly, and 4 generations have actually lived here.
Ellis, you grew up here. What was the operation like, your recollection?
Well, my dad had some livestock, some cattle, some chickens, some pigs. And he grew mainly wheat and milo, alfalfa. He used a plow, a moldboard plow. And so my brothers and I spent the summers plowing wheat stubble. It wasn't until I started in the 70s when I got tired of seeing the erosion that was occurring, wind erosion, water erosion. And I got interested in stubble mulch farming, started using a chisel and a disc versus the plow. I still have an old plow sitting in my shed out here, but I haven't used it in probably 30 years. But from stubble mulch farming, we still didn't eliminate all of the erosion by any means. I got interested in no-till farming 22 years ago. 15 years ago, I was 100% no-till, and I've got other things that I want to do. Although I'm about to retire and my son's going to take over, I'm going to try to guide him in the direction that I would take if I was going to still farm for another 30 or 40 years.
Rita, let's bring you in. You grew up on a farm not in McPherson County, though, correct?
Right, Dickinson County. So not too far away, but an active farm. My dad raised shorthorn cattle and was known across the nation for them. And so I was in 4-H and FHA, and anyway, kept busy on the farm there.
And then you started in an extension career, did you not?
Right. I graduated from Sterling College and went into county extension work and was hired at Trego County as their home economist, and then worked out there for about 3.5 years, and then opening came in McPherson County. So I was hired here, and that's how I met Ellis. His cousin was actually on the board that hired me and invited me out to church in this community one Sunday, and he happened to be at church, and so we met in the churchyard.
How appropriate.
Yes.
Did you think you were going to be marrying a farmer as you were growing up?
No, I actually said I would never marry a farmer because we didn't get vacations very often. It was a lot of hard work, and so that was my goal, was to never marry a farmer, and look what happened.
Turned out for the best, though.
Yes, it did.
It would appear. And you have done some teaching as well as
Right.
obvious strong support on the farm.
Right. I was in extension for about 8.5 years and decided I wanted to stay home and raise our family. And then in 2000, I was hired to teach preschool in McPherson at Good Beginnings Preschool. And so I did that for 14 years.
And retired from that now.
Retired from that now.
Yeah. Ellis, you started down this path telling about the conservation commitment that was ingrained in you apparently early on. And you have continued along that path to this day. And tell us where you stand as far as conservation efforts presently and where you hope to go in the future.
Well, I'm fully committed to no-till. One of the disadvantages of no-till is the need to use chemicals to control weeds. And I'm looking for a way to get around that, and to do that I think will require cattle or livestock. And with the use of a roller crimper perhaps and intensive grazing, I think we can reduce the use of fertilizer or commercial fertilizer and the commercial herbicides, insecticides, fungicides by managing our soils the way Mother Nature managed it.
Now, you haven't run livestock of your own for some time, right?
That's correct. Although I have allowed neighbors to graze on my cover crops. And so I'm not convincing my son that he has to own the livestock. I'll let him make that decision as he goes down this path. But I am going to encourage him to at least allow neighbors to bring their livestock. And I have many neighbors who would love to bring their livestock for grazing. And so with the use of cover crops, I think we can manage our system to improve soil health, raise the organic matter of the soil, And I'm looking down the road 30 to 40 years. When my son's kids are adults, and what's the soil health going to be like here then?
There are so many off-farm civic community activities that both of you have been involved with, leadership positions at various levels. Do want to spend some time on an area that you're both obviously extremely committed to. Your church activities, those would be local, those would be even international. Rita, would you speak to that?
Well, we're both very active in our local church, and one project that we've gotten involved with is called Growing Hope Globally, and that's where we set the 18-acre field that's right west of our house here. We set that aside, and the money from that goes towards this project.
All the revenue.
Yes, right? The revenue from that. And what it does, it enables people in underdeveloped countries to have the training and resources and learn the skills they need to farm, and in the way that best suits the area in which they live. And it's been a very successful program. It's helped a lot of farmers. In fact, Ellis got to actually go visit some of the farms that have been helped through this.
Where did that take you, Ellis? Just curious.
Well, that took us to Kenya. I was invited to join a group that was going to Kenya to visit some of the farms in that country. We met with 3 or 4 different Growing Hope Globally projects in Kenya that helped these people learn sustainable farming methods and got them on the feet of becoming self-sustaining in their own food production. They were very appreciative of our assistance, and they showed us what they were doing, and we were able to encourage them to keep going.
Pretty gratifying for your part, wasn't it, then?
Yes, it was.
That's Ellis and Rita Yoder of McPherson County. Joined in the 2020 class of Kansas Master Farmers, Master Farm Homemakers by Keith and Marcia Doan of Osborne County, Howard and Lori Elliott of Brown County, John and Sharon Hendricks of Cheyenne County, Jay and Stacy Rezac of Pottawatomie County, and Kevin and Vera Schultz of Kiowa County. Again, all will be formally inducted in ceremonies at the Kansas State Fair this coming Tuesday afternoon. And Agriculture Today offers its heartiest congratulations to all. This is the K-State Radio Network. Broadcasting from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Now over to today's agricultural news page and these headlines, courtesy in part of DTN. Well, state corn checkoffs in Kansas, Nebraska, and Missouri have announced they're investing $1.25 million to help expand E85 availability in the state of California. Under the low-carbon fuel standard in California, ethanol and E85 have accounted for the majority of fuels used to comply with the law there. The Nebraska Corn Board announced in a news release plans to provide the funds to retailers across that state to expand E85 infrastructure. Fuel will be supplied by McPherson Fuels. That's the largest E85 distributor in California, nearly 250 retail stations located throughout that state. And corn growers from the 3 corn checkoff groups met with representatives from McPherson in San Diego earlier in the summer to explore the potential for expanding E85. Now, California is already the largest E85 market in the country. It accounts for over 40 million gallons as of 2020, on track to reach 50 million gallons here in 2021. The Director of Business Development for McPherson Fuels, Greg Jones, said in a news release that California remains underdeveloped for E85. Though the state has 39.5 million people, it still has fewer E85 stations than the states of Iowa and Minnesota. Now, this announcement comes at a time when the Biden administration is putting an emphasis on expanding electric vehicle availability as a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector. The president of the Kansas Corn Commission, Kent Moore, said that ethanol will continue to be a low-carbon, high-octane fuel that offers Californians immediate benefits. Quoting him, flex fuel vehicles using cleaner burning and more affordable E85 can be widely deployed there to meet that state's goals quicker than any other technology. Meantime, about $700 million designed to help biofuel producers still on the way 3 months after the USDA made the announcement to help producers hurt by the COVID-19 economic shutdown. USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack told reporters yesterday the proposal is still being reviewed by the Office of Management and Budget. While the USDA made the announcement back in June, OMB, he said, has the final say. In recent months, the biofuels industry has expressed concerns about the Biden administration's plans to electrify the vehicle fleet while seemingly providing few opportunities for ethanol and biodiesel to expand their role in greenhouse gas emissions reduction. The ethanol industry was hit hard by the COVID shutdown last year, many plants either cutting or stopping production in response to lower gasoline demand. Though Congress approved the financial aid packages in response to the shutdown, biofuels companies by and large did not receive aid. Vilsack said the biofuels industry should remain patient as help is on the way. And the USDA has announced major funding to help rural renewable energy efforts with millions of dollars in loans and grants. More on that from the USDA's Gary Crawford.
I think it's fair to say that an important aspect of building back rural America better is investing in more efficient energy production, climate-smart infrastructure.
And so Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack has announced a $464 million investment in loans and grants to that end. Vilsack telling reporters $129 million of that will come through the Rural Energy for America program, REAP, to help farmers and small rural businesses install renewable energy systems or make energy efficiency improvements, which Vilsack says taken together
will essentially save the equivalent of 379 million kilowatt hours of electricity, which is enough essentially to take care of the needs of over 35,000 homes.
Meanwhile, $335 million of investment financing will come from USDA's electric loan program to make improvements to over 1,400 miles of transmission lines and to install smart grid technology. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Next up, Marcia Boswell with this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop, with a topic appropriate for the opening of the Kansas State Fair today. Marcia?
It's nearly time for the smell of cinnamon rolls baking and the sound of laughter as families explore Agriland to permeate through the Pride of Kansas building at the Kansas State Fair. Celebrate Kansas agriculture by riding in a virtual combine, sifting different types of grain between your fingers, or milking Maybelle, the mechanical cow, the newest addition to the exhibit. And don't forget to request another staple for this time of year, Kansas Wheat's annual recipe booklet. Back in person in 2021, Agriland maintains its proud tradition as a cooperative educational exhibit that provides an interactive experience for children to learn more about agriculture. For more than 30 years, Kansas agricultural organizations have come together to share interactive, hands-on activities with State Fair attendees. Check out the exhibit from September 10th through the 19th. Teachers who visit Agriland can sign up for free lesson plans provided by the Kansas Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom. These lesson plans connect classrooms to Kansas agriculture by exploring various facets of agriculture and learning how important and full of opportunities agriculture is. Agriland provides farm-to-fork education for fairgoers. Families learn about the roles Kansas farmers and ranchers have in producing our food, energy, and fiber through a fun, hands-on experience like none other. The Kansas Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom created a virtual version of Agriland in 2020 that provides great resources for teachers and parents to use throughout the year to educate children about the role agriculture plays in our everyday lives. Those resources are available on their website at ksagclassroom.org. Fairgoers and non-fairgoers alike can also request a copy of another State Fair staple, Kansas Wheat's annual recipe booklet, The free annual recipe booklet is a tradition stretching back nearly 6 decades, celebrating Kansas as the wheat state and the breadbasket of America. Some collect the recipe books as part of a collection. Others use recipes from the book in their county fairs the following year. This year's book features the winning recipes from the 2021 National Festival of Breads, including savory Thai peanut sauce rolls, strawberry lemonade swirls, and many more. Unlike previous years, the booklet will not be available at the Kansas State Fair, but recipes are available and copies can be requested online at kswheat.com/recipebook. See if you can spot all the great ways wheat is celebrated at the Kansas State Fair and find more information about Agriland and other exhibits at kansasstatefair.com. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Marcia Boswell.
Thanks, Marcia. Agriland in the Pride of Kansas Agriculture Building toward the southwest corner of the fairgrounds. Check it out. You're listening to Agriculture Today. It's time once again on Agriculture Today to bring you up to the moment on Kansas agricultural weather, courtesy of the Weather Data Library at K-State and climatologist Mary Knapp, K-State Research and Extension. Since we last talked, Mary, healthy rains in most, not all, but most of Kansas.
Yeah, so we had a very widespread rain event. Heaviest rains were generally across central and east central Kansas, south of I-70, but we did have significant rain amounts north of that and, again, close to the Oklahoma border. So, again, very widespread, unlike earlier events where we had pockets of heavy rain, but not that widespread nature of the rain event. And that was very welcome, did some good in addressing the soil moisture deficits that have plagued the area, but still not as much as we need to get ready for the fall season.
Of course, though, there are the usual exceptions, those being the western reaches of the state.
Right, particularly northwestern Kansas. They did get, again, beneficial amounts of rain, but they've been very dry for some time, so we're not seeing the improvement in that area that we've seen in the central and eastern parts of the state. Southwest Kansas also saw some moisture, but not as much as they would need to relieve the increasing drought in that particular region. We did see on the U.S. Drought Monitor improvement in the central part of the state, but again in that southwest corner, and also in south central Kansas, approaching the Oklahoma border, we saw some intensification in that area. They saw very little of the rain in that region, and of course that's creating issues.
And the last several days were reminders that summer is not yet gone.
Right, and these last several days have not been particularly hot. It's the next couple of days that are going to be noticeably warm. We're talking mid-90s. We may hit 100 in a few spots. Kind of the introduction of the State Fair weekend where we typically see some summer-like temperatures, and this year will not be an exception. This is going to be in advance of a cool front that's expected midweek. One of the noteworthy parts of this weekend weather event will be humidities are going to be higher, so those nighttime lows are going to be more elevated. And indeed, when we look back at August, which was warmer than normal, a lot of that heat came with elevated nighttime lows. So we will see that reprise itself as we go into the weekend.
Going to have to keep an eye on livestock for a bit yet.
That certainly will be something that producers will want to watch out for. Again, we're going to be looking at those warm nighttime temperatures, so check out the heat stress tool on the Mesonet at mesonet.ksu.edu and watch. Again, it's not necessarily that single day event, but the repeated periods of stress that will create issues with your livestock.
Now, you mentioned there's a cold front expected midweek next week. Will moisture accompany that, Mary?
At this point, they're looking fairly confident that we'll see some moisture. Unfortunately, the quantitative precip forecast is not favoring as much moisture as we saw with this last round of rain. We're looking maybe at a quarter to a half an inch in most of the areas, a little bit higher chances along our eastern border with Missouri, but again, not in the hefty amounts that we saw with the last event.
But there will be something of a cool down. What does the extended forecast say, though, in that respect?
If we stretch it out and look at the 8 to 14-day outlook, which carries us through the 23rd of September, we're going right back into the warmer and drier than normal pattern. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean 100-degree days, but as we move into late September and into October, our daily average highs will be continuing to fall, so it won't take as much to be higher than normal.
And as far as those drier conditions, depends on how one looks at it. If they've row crops to harvest and it's that time, why, that's excellent. But if you're planting winter wheat or preparing to do so, not so much.
Right. There is a lot of concern, again, particularly in the western areas of the state, to have sufficient moisture in the soils to get that wheat germinated and up. We saw the problems that were inherent with it last year, and we would prefer not to repeat that pattern. Next week, we should be able to see the outlook for October and whether or not there's going to be any shift in this pattern.
And any word of recent about La Nina?
The La Nina is still in the forecast. It has not been officially declared a La Nina yet. The surface water temperatures in the Pacific area are below average, but not quite to the threshold of a La Nina. The subsurface temperatures are also cooler than average, which would be favoring the onset of that La Nina. And that's still in the outlook for the winter, starting sometime in the next month or two. The forecast also favors a very short-lived La Nina that by the springtime it will have reverted to neutral conditions.
And as you've told us before, the later we can push La Nina back into the winter, the better off we'll be in this region.
The less impact it will have in our fall conditions.
Very well. Well, we want to point out to folks that they'll want to be tuned in here next week, for as many have likely heard, you are, in fact, retiring from Kansas State University a week from today, Mary, after a long career of service to K-State and to Kansans and far beyond that. And what we'd like to do is visit with you in an extended session next week about the weather and about your career. So looking forward to that, and we'll welcome you back in then. Many thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Mary Knapp, climatologist, K-State Research and Extension on Kansas agricultural weather. Previewing Monday's broadcast for the cattle market segment, we'll feature Caitlin McCulloch of the Livestock Marketing Information Center. And we'll talk with K-State's Casey Olson about his ongoing research on late-season pasture burning. That and more ahead for you on Monday. Meantime, thanks for tuning in today, and the best to you this weekend. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.